Hello, hello, it's Carrie with Lamia Fox Jewelry and Art. A lot of people were interested in a video showing my process of putting together my Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys junk journals. I wanted to really quick kind of start that. First of all, you can see right here, I do have some Hardy Boy books that I have already kind of started the process on. So these are kind of like the ones that I made, like these ones, and you can see this is the cover that the spine that I covered with the jean material. But I do have a few that I think these are vintage. These are the vintage, kind of more along the lines of the vintage of my Nancy Drew books that I have. So I think I'm going to show my process of doing one of each of these. So one Hardy Boys and one Nancy Drew book. So I'm going to use this one. I thought I will show you how I got the book and cull some pages. Oh, I really want to do this one. So I'm going to put this aside. Right here, all I have today to work with for doing the fabric is just a little bit of muslin. So that's what I'm going to work with. Also, you can see here I have started the process of kind of pulling out my papers that I might use in the journals. So I'm going to set these guys aside. So first of all, I'm going to grab my razor. I'm very carefully going to cut down on this edge to remove the pages from this book. And there's that. And you're going to want to be really careful with this process because you really don't want to cut any of the spine. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut down on this side, and again I'm going to make sure not to be cutting into the spine. Now I've got my pages and I've got my book cover. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut this fabric to fit down in here. I like to make it so that there's little kind of fraying edges. So I'm actually going to cut a little bit here and rip. I'm going to do the same thing here and tear down here. For the most part, I'm just pretty much eyeballing and tearing where I think that I need to. I didn't use any measurements. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be putting this piece here, just right like that, and you can kind of get an idea. And I know I'm going to be doing the same thing for this piece. I'm going to go ahead and kind of just cut that piece as well. Now I'm going to take this and put these aside. I'm going to be using this Scotch Create glue stick and go ahead and adhere this material down. I'm going to make sure to put quite a bit of Scotch Create on here just to make sure that this really sticks down. And I'm kind of just centering that in and definitely rubbing that down into the binding and over here. These are older books. I just want to make sure that these guys are going to hold together and be able to be opened and closed without there being a problem. Okay, so I've got that one down. Let's work on this one. Again, I'm using a lot of Scotch Create just to make sure that I can really adhere this down and so that it will not be coming up off the page anytime soon. I really want to make sure that this creates a good binding that can be opened and closed, and so that these books can be used for lots of years to come. So that is what that looks like. Now we're going to take this, we're going to actually sew down here and across, down and across on both books. After a lot of debate, I decided that I wanted to record this and show my process on how I covered the spine of these books with the material like this. Obviously, the book has already been gutted, and I found an old pair of jeans that I can use on this project. I've made it so that it's going to fit all the way around. Width-wise, it's about 1.5 inches. And it's about 18 inches long. So I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac on this. I know I'm going to go over my word a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and start by grabbing my Fabri-Tac, and I'm going to put this down. If I were to do it again, I probably would rip the jeans to be about 1 inch instead of 1.5 inches. But overall, I'm happy with the results. I'm going to kind of try to put that down right where I want it to be and squish it down in there, and on the front cover. That's making me happy. If I'd have centered the material, I obviously would have covered up way too many of the words in the front, but I really like the way that it turned out, where we have more jean in the back, and I think that it adds to the ambiance of the book. Once I've finished gluing this down on the front cover, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and make sure to, as straight as possible, pull up the material and really glue it down in the middle. Because this book doesn't have any decorative interior pages that would be fun to look at, I like doing this because it really adds to the look of the book. I really feel that. Once you get a good amount of glue down, you're going to want to go ahead and just make sure to push down and really get into all of the little nooks and crannies and make sure that this is down really well. Obviously, this is going to be the interior binding of your book, and you're going to want to make sure that it's going to be nice and secure in there. I am going to go ahead and glue this bit up. I decided to keep this little piece on because I really liked the look, the frayed look that it had on the edges, and in the end it turned out really nicely. That is how I'm doing it. Just like on the other books, I've opted to go ahead and sew down and across, and I really think that it turned out well. Okay, so we just finished up with sewing our, prepping our books and sewing on them, but we're not quite finished with prepping our books yet. What we need to do now is we need to make our closure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to find the middle, so I'm just gonna eyeball this. This is about where I want to put my button brad. So I've got some brads. So I'm gonna go ahead and punch this hole through, okay? Kind of do. Okay, before I put the brad in, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to kind of do this so that I have a little mark there to show that's about where I want to be putting my hole in. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my Crop-A-Dile, make that hole right there, and before I set the eyelet, I'm actually going to kind of mark this on the Hardy Boys book. Okay, so I've made my hole here. I'm going to kind of mark here and make that hole. Now that I have this hole here, I'm going to mark across for this hole so that I can put this hole here. Doing it this way, that ensures that for sure you've got it across and you're in the right place. Okay, so now that I've made my holes, I'm gonna go ahead and I think I'm gonna do an orange. Nope, I wanna do the blue. I'm gonna do the blue on this one. And maybe we'll do the orange on that one. So when I put this on, I'm gonna leave a little bit of space so that we can, if I have it down all the way, then I can't get my closure underneath it. So I'm just gonna leave just a tiny little, it's about 1/8 of an inch or less of space. I'm going to go ahead and set that. Now I have these really cool, fun button brads, and I love using these to make my closures. Any round brad that doesn't have edges will work. If it has edges, I found that it just gets caught up on it and it's not really fun. Now that the brad is set in the Nancy Drew book, I'm gonna go ahead and set the one in the Hardy Boy book. And again, of course, I am leaving that little gap of space to ensure that we can close this. I kind of like that. Okay, done with those. Now we're gonna set our eyelets in the back. Of course, I'm gonna use my Crop-A-Dile to set my eyelets. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, you can use any kind of eyelet setting tool you have. So those are our covers, and oh, one more thing. We're going to take our little piece of muslin. What I found is that with the brads, I want them to stay still, and also I don't want them to harm my book pages. So I'm going to go ahead and cover these brads with a little piece of fabric, and I like to do that just because I think it's pretty cool. It adds another little texture, kind of adds in a little bit of fun. So again, I'm gonna tear it, making it look rustic. And these pieces don't need to be all that big, but you could cover this with paper. You can do whatever you want. I highly recommend using Fabri-Tac or Fabri-Fix to put this onto the book. Okay, so I'm going to put a big dollop right here on the brad and make sure that I've really got that down. And the best thing to do is really to spread this around a little bit so that you don't get discoloration on your fabric. It doesn't leak through, but then I'm going to go ahead and put this down. Okay, so that's down. There is that cover. We'll just go ahead and finish this off, putting a large dollop of Fabri-Fix down and spreading it out and then popping our piece of fabric on. As I'm doing this, I am going to make sure that it's down as flat as I can get it. There we go. Got that down. I'm happy with that. So this is how I've prepped my covers. So this is what I've got. I opted not to record the process of me putting the brads and the eyelets in on this book because I didn't really think that you would need that. That said, here are the final results of this project. I hope you liked it. Bye.